Good morning, everyone. How are we doing today? Oh, it's beautiful. So, oh man, it seems like I still have some camera issues. I don't know what happened, but my camera just decided to get really fuzzy and really like distorted. Um, so I hope this isn't that big of a problem. It looks like it's just really bad when I'm up close. Let me just try and scale it down so it's not as just disgusting to look at me. It's still really fuzzy. Oh, I I don't know. I will have to look more into why my camera is being so rude to me right now because I have a nice Logitech camera and it's just the settings on it are terrible. I don't know if the lens is just foggy or what, but hey guys, welcome back. Obviously, this week will be very difficult to top last week because last week we had Benny on. Oh, that was amazing to have. But this week, as he promised on Wednesday, good morning, Rocket Czar. Hello, hello. But yes, this morning, as he promised, there is some developer insight. Oh man, my mic is covering the chat box, isn't it? Let's just move this over here and kind of twinge that down. I should just move my microphone to the other side of my desk so it doesn't get in the way of everything that's on here. Mud Turtle, good morning. So, yeah, guys. Oh man, now I'm just off center. That's gonna bug me. Can we squeeze me in right there? Maybe what we got to do is just knock that right there, so I'm not completely off center. There we go. Perfect. That's not gonna look awkward at all. Guys. So we got some more developer insight on Wednesday, and I wanted to talk with you guys about that real quick as we go in here. That just looks really awkward. Man, is there a way... Can I just flip this thing? Can I flip my camera? I'm so sorry about the technical issues. Yeah, it's just like, this is really weird. Let's go in here. Can I just flip this? Is there a way to just flip it? There's that way. There's flip vertical. Where's the flip horizontal? Oh well. There is not. Oh well. Gosh dinnity darn it. Anyway, guys, on the new insight discussion that we got on Wednesday, we got a bunch of news that I have been hearing you guys talk about like all week, and that's fantastic to see. But yeah, let's just go through this. Obviously, they want to do more with the families, as they said they really want to do it because Kindred and they're not Kindred. Awakening and Mythical both came out before they really decided to push hard on the families. As Mythical started to come out with these family symbols on the cards, and then Kindred really started to bring them into fruition. But the huge, massive card pool that they came out with the first two sets didn't have anything to do with them. So reworking all of those cards was a big priority on their part, which I think is a great idea for them. In my personal opinion, it's a great change for them to try and make. And as we're seeing here, the Astral is really focusing more on Chimchu. We're getting almost completely rewritten changes to a lot of these cards. Sun Beacon is no longer a defend card. It's actually a buff, which is awesome. And now they're going full digital. They can, be a little more experimental with some of these cards being able to change them. And obviously, this Sun Beacon is still going to be a bonkers card, I think, in a Chimchu deck. And it's really going to help play the Chimchu style more as opposed to just the Chimchu, was it Militant is what they said? Chimchu Commander decks. Sun Beacon's just a good card. Gets you an additional action if your last card to card is a Chimchu. Deals a minor amount of damage, but that additional action is a huge key part to this. Battle Priest is no longer... whenever you heal on this turn, you also deal damage to your opponent. We had some really nice swing turns in that Asavak deck that I built with Battle Priestess, and some other cards that were really fun to do, but it was very difficult to pull off. Now it's just, draw 2 cards, deal 2 damage, but if there's a Chimchu on your discard, it increases those by 1, so you draw 3 cards to deal 3 damage. Not a bad buff. Not a bad buff by any means. The increase to Chimchu makes it okay. I don't know if increasing both values by 1. Obviously, it is an additional card. And an additional... The damage is kind of negligible. It's the additional card that feels really good there. You draw 3 cards. Because then if you're on a Chimchu deck, you might run Battle Priestess over Astronomers, right? because they'll essentially draw you this almost the same amount of cards. Your deck is still running the nice Chimchu synergies and stuff like that. And that's the stuff that I really like to see, is there's cards that you look at and go, oh, this is comparable to another card. Instead of just like, why wouldn't I run the other card? It's like, oh, well, because this one fits more into my Chimchu style deck. And that 3 damage could be, potentially lethal at some points in the game. Maybe I want to run Battle Priestesses over Astronomers. And you get some really nice things to go with in there. Then Dawn Wanderer. You look at the top 3 cards, rearrange them, and then draw one face up. If it's a Chimchu, gain an additional action, deal 2 damage to your target. So like, third corner, unless you're top deck really bad, you're going to draw that Chimchu. You're going to deal 2 damage. You're going to get an initial action. It's going to be good for you. And they also said they're going to be introducing an 11th family. And they said maybe up here, which I think is just, it may be coming soon. And then we go ahead and get the symbol for it right there. Like, it's not a maybe. It's coming soon, guys. There's no need to spoil it if it's already spoiled in your same post. Now, I'm going with something more like a relic. Like a relic family. It would fit really nice into the whole Colossi background, as they're more of an ancient race that made all these really fantastic things in the world of Tantos, like the Frozen Totem, like the Colossi Skybeam, all these things. Where they're not necessarily locations anymore, they are relics. And I'm really happy to see new families being introduced into this game, because if they didn't try to experiment with a new family race or anything like that, they're just not tapping into a full potential of lore and amazing things they can do with this game. So I think the Frozen Totem being a relic now is awesome. I think that they should consider making some of the Colossis relics as well, like the one in Mountain, the Colossi Gateway. That could be a relic instead of just whatever. It helps elementals, but it's a relic. It's more of a support thing, as these relics are meant to support. They're not meant to have a huge family of their own. But I think giving relics could be a lot of fun. And obviously, when you get attacked, move Chimchu cards from your discard pile to your hand. Now, this I'm actually okay with, because, like I said before, getting family-specific retrieval, I think, is a great way to go with this. As I stated before, in my own opinion, the Necro Dreadling, that was just move 3 cards back to your deck, whatever, that was so generic, it was always going to be the best recursion. Now, if you make it 3 undead, okay, cool. But now you're like, oh, do I use this in an undead deck? Maybe I want to use something else because there's specific cards that I want to bring back. Maybe I actually want to use more of the Leecher, the Venom Leecher, over this, because all I really want to do is bring some of these poison cards back. I don't really want to be restricted to just an undead family. That's where they're going to open up a lot more of these cards that are going to be interchangeable and interswappable, which is really going to mix up the meta, is when they start getting more specific with how their cards interact with each other. And I think the Frozen Totem is a great way to do it. Before, Frozen Totem was an okay card before. It wasn't seeing a whole lot of play. Venom Feeder. What was I saying? Was it Venom Leecher? Probably. Yeah. Man. I'm like 90% close on these names. Leecher, yeah. But yeah, I mean, Frozen Totem was like, what? When you get an attack? When you get attacked, you can move a card back to your discard pile to your hand. That was okay. It wasn't seeing a whole lot of play because Chimchu Infiltrator was the better one, because it was an attack. It wasn't a buff. It wasn't relied on your opponent to do something. You had full control over it. Now the Frozen Totem essentially is the same thing, but you get to move Chimchu cards back. And it's 1 corner sooner, which is awesome. Doesn't mean your opponent automatically has to remove it. And then the second one is 2. It's 2 Chimchu cards instead of just 1 and 1. Frozen Totem is great. I think it's an amazing change to this. Corrupted Spirit, as I said, a lot of these cards, like Corrupted Spirit, are all being changed for their 3 damage, draw a card. Now, this is 3 damage if you have an undead buff in play, draw a card. The conditional increases, I think, is what's going to make this game a lot more, I don't want to say sporadic, a lot more unique in their deck design. The conditional increases to cards is how you make specific decks work better than other decks. And it's how you don't just have the same 20 plus cards in the same deck, and there's 5 cards you take out that are interchangeable to make your deck, oh, it's an undead deck now because I'm running, 3 Reapers. It's more undead, so it's an undead deck. I'm like, well, no, you're still running, all the same cards. You're still running Corrupted Spirits, everything that was in every Dread deck ever. And now that Corrupted Spirit is, you're probably only going to run this in an undead deck for the card draw. There's going to be other cards out there that are better for card draw, but if you're running undead, this is going to be a much better one. Um, the Wall of Bones now is a damage reducing one. Obviously, it works really well. If this expires, you may move one undead deck from your deck to your hand. Obviously, this is a much better beneficial for an undead style deck, but there's still a lot of undead cards that are really good. Corrupted Spirit already is an undead card. You might just want to get a Soul Thief or a Bone, not a Soul Thief, Soul Reaper. No, Bone Reaper and Shambler. Wow, could not say that name for the life of me. You could get a Shambler to your hand. That's a good DPS card. At Wall of Bones, it's really opening up to not just be a defensive card, but as more of a, once it's gone, I actually get a benefit from it. Really hitting hard, and very nice to see that a lot of this stuff is really being important on buffs are going to be very powerful to play. They're going to be extremely strong to play. So please play them. Like, that's so awesome. That's so cool to see. And as we down here, Umbron Sergeant actually got a buff. It's the top 4 cards now. I really hope they make Umbron like a viable family, because as they said, Umbron is always going to be the support to Dread, to their undead. It's always going to be a good support. Umbron Sergeant, if it's always going to be support and you're not looking for Umbron cards, I don't care how much they increase its power level, it's probably not going to be seen in a normal base. Because, yeah, you get to heal, you get to draw some Umbron cards, but if there's maybe like 2 or 3 Umbron cards you run in a deck to support the undead, Umbron Sergeant is not going to be a good reliable card draw. It's not going to be a good strong thing at all. Cards like this are a good support if the family itself is starting to get its more core deck. As they've been saying later in this post that Beasts is actually a supporting family, which I find very ironic, because Beasts are very well established as their own archetype as well. We've been seeing a lot of things that are supporting Beasts, a lot of things that are doing its own thing. It's like, yeah, Beasts should be a supportive class, and I'm like, no, Beasts are actually its own class. You've built them up well enough, you give them enough DPS, enough cards that support that family, that they are their own archetype in a sense. And Umbron Sergeant, the Umbron family has yet to get to that point where it's got enough DPS, it's got enough healing and support, that it's its own archetype. It's all support cards right now, and a support card that draws more support cards doesn't really make sense in a way. But we'll see what they come out with Umbron in this next set. I'm really excited to see that. A lot of these cards, people are talking about like, man, are these really going to be? Sorry, I'm just looking here. I'm trying to find the OL. Flame Chained Elder was one up for discussion as well. That if you play an elemental card, it increases more damage. That's awesome. Before it was if you play a fire card, your other cards, the fire card is the other fire cards are increased. So it was a lot less viable to run. It was very difficult to play off unless you were playing a strictly fire deck. Now Flame Chained Elder, now let's open up the Elemental family. This card can now be splashed in to other Elemental styles. It can be splashed in to Storm Elemental. It can be splashed into Dread Elemental. It can be splashed into a lot of other stuff like that. Now, obviously, a lot of people are like, oh, you just run fire in the Dread package. Flame Chain used to be broken, now it's more broken. I didn't think Flame Chain used to be that broken before. I didn't see it a whole lot because it wasn't as reliable. You needed all fire cards. Like, you needed to be able to do... It had some really cool synergies, but it wasn't broken. And, of course, it got rotated out to Legacy, so it wasn't even in Standard. Now it's coming back, and now let's open up to the Elemental family. I do think these numbers could be tamed down a bit. I do think these numbers... especially, it's like, if you play an Elemental card... all your other cards deal more damage and healing that turn, you could bump this down to 2/2 and 2, and it would still be a ridiculously good card. It's the fact that, yes, it does more damage and more healing. It's not just a damage increase. Flame Chained Elder, I love the rework they did to make it more of the family. More of the family archetype. And because of that, like I said, it is getting a lot more viable to play. Because of Cage change? Which Flame Chained Warrior? That might be. I mean, Flame Chained Warrior is still good. I don't know if they changed or if they showed what it's being changed to. But yeah, Flame Chained Elder, like, it was okay. And now it's just ridiculous because what you could do, and you know, if anyone who plays the Abyss package knows this, have this come out next turn, play an Abyss Tentacle. Guess what? You get an additional action. So for 2 actions, all of your other cards are dealing more damage, which means you use an ability. All of your Abyss buffs are damage increasing. It's better. It's better to run the Flame Shade Elder now than it is to run Vortex Planes for elementals, because Vortex Planes only increased elemental damage. This is as long as you play an elemental card, all of your damage is increased. That's nuts. That's ridiculous. That's why I think these numbers need to be toned down a bit. Because this card, like I said, went from very situational, play a whole lot of fire cards, to now that it's opened up to the family, this thing is going to have the most insane swing turns in the world. Like, no doubt about it. I don't care what you say. Elementals are so sporadic out there now that Flame Chained Elder, you just run Flame Claws or whatever fire item you want, splash in Flame Chained Elders into an elemental deck, and your deck has the biggest burst potential out there that I'm seeing right now, because of how much stuff that's going to be on the board doing it. And like I said, especially with the Abyss package being elementals, and those not triggering on the buff phase, but triggering on an action. So you can lay a card first and then trigger all your board's damage. That's going to be huge. Flame Chained Warriors now 3 damage, rotate 1 step forward. That's fine. I'm okay with it actually losing a damage increase. It's being brought back down to lose a damage to become more of a tech or utility card, which is what it was in the first place. There are a lot of cards out there that just deal 4 damage that you're okay running. That was deal 4 damage, rotate something. That's already above its pay grade on what it wants to do. It's board manipulation with a really good amount of damage. Yeah, I'm actually okay if like cards like Blastbot and all that stuff were only 3 damage, remove a buff. That's okay in my opinion, especially if they're considering one action being 5. Removing a card and dealing almost 5 damage, that's like 2 cards in 1. That's how I value that point. So bumping that down to 3 damage, I think is more balanced. Being able to spread out their damaging numbers and changing how much utility is valued in this game. Now, Magma Potter going from Earth buffs to Elemental buffs, returning against your hand. The major inclusion here is including any cards stored under them too. That's nuts. Like, because what's the Flame Chain where you literally store elementals under this on its 4th corner? Blast Spot is now 3 damage. Awesome. Did they share a lot more card changes, or is it just like in the app a lot of these cards have been updated? Did they go and do the update change without like saying anything on the news? Did they do that already? In all honesty, I haven't gone into the app and really looked into a lot of the cards. I've just been paying attention to the news posts. I actually haven't gone in. Did they do a huge card update? Like, are all these updates live? I thought it was coming in October. If you look on general chat, you'll see a lot more sneak peeks shared by Benny in official Discord. What? Man, I must have been missing this stuff while I'm at work. I'll have to go into that. Wow, yeah, you were not kidding. You guys squeezed a lot out of Benny. Wow. There are 7 cards nerfed in the LS app now. Real? Okay. Interesting. I like you shared new hero art. I like the change to Selene. Hive Queen Axie looks ridiculously good. Focus Chamber it's okay. Swooping Rockwing. Still not probably going to see a whole lot of play. Iris Thistlestem, awesome art. Blastbot, okay. There's just something here that says remove 1 item from another hero. Duskglade Tome being restricted to how much health before you draw a card is really awesome. Battleborn Oppressor dealing 1 more damage is really cool. Tempest Rod being restricted, that's really nice. I like a lot of those changes. Yeah. The fact that Mountain got something that manipulates combos makes me feel like that should have been a Storm card, in all my opinion. Um, but yeah, it's like if you take 5 damage, all your opponent has to do is 5 and then 5. Or let a buff rotate and then deal 5 more. Like, it's... If it's only on the first corner... Oh, it is. Okay, it's only on the first corner. Then it goes into it. But yeah, Sweeping Rockwing, it feels very out of place in Mountain. Feels very out of place in Mountain. Then again, if your Mountain deck is more like you use your action cards to deal damage, like Flame Chain Elder and all this crazy stuff, then the Swooping Rockwing's like, well, then I have this buff out here that's making a free combo. I guess it's okay. I don't know. Crystal Core. Oh! I like Crystal Core's new drawback. That makes me very excited. It's like self-mill. That's really cool. Spirit Tap actually got an increase. That's awesome. Spirit Tap really wasn't that powerful before. I think Poisonous Mist got an increase too in damage-wise. I'm just now looking at these because I wasn't aware of any of this. Core is stupid. Come on, man. It's self-mill. You could put it back in your deck and then mill it again. It destroys resources. Like, there's actually a drawback to Crystal Core now. That, I'm okay with that. A lot of people were hoping for the change to just be send it to the discard pile. But there's a lot of ways to get items and stuff back from the discard pile. It fixes nothing. I think it's a fine improvement. We'll see if it, really affects the way Crystal Core is played, but you could, like, mill a combo. You could do a whole bunch of other things. I think maybe the drawback... I mean, yeah, a lot of people were hoping it would go to the discard pile. We'll see how much the mill drawback has to offer, because obviously you have to break it first. You have to pop the core in itself. I think that with Crystal Core as well, it should not have the when this happens to this card mill it. It should be when this card is removed entirely. So either being put back into your deck or being removed with Battleborn Oppressor has that drawback. So the drawback is not only when it's popped. It's just when it's taken away. Or when this card leaves play, have that happen. So that if someone even tries to oh, well, I don't need Crystal Core anymore, I'll equip another item. They still have a drawback to it. I think that would be really cool. Fiscus Key. Oh, okay. It's no longer able to manipulate your opponent's board. But it is a nice ability for an unaligned key. It kind of got an upgrade. I really like the ability to manipulate your opponent's board. That was really strong with how the Fiscus Key was working. Because then, it went back into your deck and you got to draw it later. But it still draw a card. 3D damage, so 6 damage on a key. It's not bad. And I think it's in the new Relic family. That's really cool. Long Fuse Hurler. They're using the art for Crazed Bomber. Very cool. Those are actually really cool. Oh, it's a buff now? I didn't even see that. I thought it was still an item. I thought it legitimately was still an item. You're right, it has the buff corners. What am I thinking? Yeah. So they're removing unaligned items entirely then. Man, I like the fact that there was unaligned items. Bomber's also a buff. Yeah, I saw the corners on the Bomber image. I was like, oh, Bomber's now a buff. Interesting. I wonder what it does. That's all drunk. But yeah, it's really difficult for me to keep up with Discord now because my new route has me going to stores with no Wi-Fi. and no like internet access. So like for 8 to 10 hours a day, I don't know what's happening. So me trying to come home and catch up on everything is almost a hassle now. Bomber is dead. Terror Shock Bomber is not dead. He's just being reworked. As I said before, and I really hope this happens. Don't quote me on this because this is all speculation. Now that we finally have the keyword restricted on buff removal, that opens up a vast opportunity to make more diverse and unique forms of buff removal. Now, as a lot of people are sure, Crazed Bomber was, awesome in the way its design was. However, I think reworking it into a buff for the art, that was a bad idea. I think bringing Crazed Bomber back to be an explosive type of buff removal that was able to remove one buff, remove one of your own buffs to remove an additional buff, that would be an awesome explosive buff removal that really fits well into the thematic playstyle that Tech has of removing its own buff. It fits really well into the explosive area, so you could run that buff removal in a deck that's more, I want to remove my own buffs. That type of deck. Than running Hammer Down Enforcer. Obviously, yes, Hammer Down Enforcer is now a more consistent, well-designed buff removal, but that buff removal could play really well into the explosive family. And like I said, because restricted, you can't have 3 of that buff, 3 buff removal like to form 6. You have to mix and match to always have 3 and no more. And I really hope they start doing that in the future, is making a wider variety of buff removal and spreading it out into the other orders, so crossing orders and stuff like that becomes more uniquely fun to bring in different types of buff removal and still keeping it at 3. Tech would have too much removal then, 9 potentially. That's the thing though. You wouldn't just do it to Tech, obviously you'd do it to everything. But with the keyword restriction, you'd only be able to run 3. So having an order with that much buff removal doesn't matter if you can only run 3 in a deck. They have different types or different ways to run buff removal or different ways to help it, which only helps deck design. If every buff removal they make from now on has the keyword restricted, they can now open it up to making a vast variety of cards that remove buffs in the way that Hammer Down Enforcer does and all the other generic buff removal does, to open up different ways to do it, which will then make more deck archetypes more viable. Still can run Blastbot. Yeah, but that's a family-specific buff removal. Family-specific buff removal, I'm finding okay. You can still run Loot Snatchers, which will move a buff if your opponent has 4 or more. You could potentially run 9 cards that are buff removal if they're running the right family and if they're going wide on board. There's restrictions to how that works. I'm going to run 10 Blastbots in every deck. You go ahead and recode the game so you can do that, Terror Shock, and I will avoid you on ladder as much as possible. But yeah, I mean, that's what, in my opinion, I think is really good about this game. If you're going to make a generic buff removal, put restricted on it. So you can then make different types of buff removal and open up a wide variety of choices for the player to build decks around and to make it so they might run this certain card in their deck as opposed to this one. Blastbot kills a lot of decks. Well, if you want to put it that way, yes. Blastbot does kill a lot of decks because a lot of really good cards are locations. If we are going to see a massive rise in families, especially if Insect is going to be the major one, Hive Flusher is probably going to be seeing a lot, as there's now insects in Dread as well that are starting to be seen. What's the one that removes elementals? Is there a buff removal that removes elementals yet or not? Because as soon as they make one, that one is going to be an all-star. That one is going to be an all-star card. It's going to kill Flame Chain Elder. It's going to kill Abyss Tentacle. It's going to do a bunch of other things because the elemental family is so huge. I'm surprised right now with how much beasts are kind of being played that the Dread one. Vortex Slayer. Thank you. Yeah. Vortex Slayer, I mean, now that people are going to be more in the buff state, Vortex Slayer is probably going to see a huge rise in play, especially if Flame Chain Elder is as good as it's going to be. There is the Dread one that removes 2 buffs. That one is as we're starting to see more buffs being played, buff removal cards are going to be played more. Crude Exterminator, yes, and that one removes 2 beasts, and beasts aren't even a family archetype. As much as they said it's a support, that one gets to remove 2. Why? Why does it get to remove 2? Hopefully it gets reworked so it's only removing 1. But still, like that one, if Storm becomes really popular, yeah, you're going to run Crude Exterminator because Thunder Slug is a beast. You're going to remove it just for Thunder Slug. Like, people are saying, like, yeah, Blast Spot's so good. Yeah, it's because locations are so good. Crude Exterminator, as soon as beasts become good, that card is going to be amazing. Like, it's the counteracting to the certain families that you're going to run into to give the kind of difficult matchups in a sense. Because if you go against Tech with location, yeah, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. But if you go against, say, Storm, Blastbot isn't in Storm, they're going to have a lot more trouble with your locations. And it's going to make that rock, paper, scissors format a lot more interesting and viable, because there shouldn't be one deck that rules them all. There should never be that. Was one turn away from going 9-0 in draft, but died to combo. That's a bummer. Is Thunderslug worth removing now? I'm going to say still yes. Still yes. Because not only will it remove 2 over the course of a turn, but it potentially hinders your play if you really want to play a buff. Because putting a Thunderslug down and then having your opponent sit there the next turn going, if I play a buff, he can just remove it without it doing anything. That's a huge drawback for a loss of a card. That it's more of a mind game. Yes, I do understand that it's not 2 instantly like every other buff removal out there is now, and there's very little way to run it to turn it forward, which will really kind of hinder how that stuff works. I'd say it's fine. It's not the best. But then again, if Storm opens up different avenues and opportunities to bring in other forms of buff removal in its lightning and its water aspect, then maybe you run Thunderslug in a more controlling deck that has the cards that'll rotate your buff forward to remove stuff. But if there's cards out there that'll say, like, remove a buff if the top card of your discard pile is a combo, remove a second one. Something like that. Or if you have a combo off in play, remove a second one. There's a lot more different avenues they can start taking these buff removal cards for Storm and for all the other orders to open up. And then Thunderslug won't feel that bad because it's not your only option to run. And as soon as it's not your only option to run, then you start thinking, okay, well, which one is better in the deck that I want to build it around? Am I building a buff manipulation deck that rotates my stuff forward on a certain to get really nice swing turns? Yeah, Thunderslug is going to be amazing in that deck. Or am I playing more of just a tempo control where I want to have the constant basis of just removing 2 opponents' buffs? Mind you, there's a drawback to it somehow, or a conditional increase. Yeah, but that one might be better than Thunderslug. And it all depends on if they go down that route of making more buff removal cards to introduce more options to the players to play and build decks around. That's where it all comes down to. Because then yeah, you're going to sit there going, well, okay, maybe Thunderslug's not that bad if it fits better into this deck than another one. Then giving it something to compare to is, yeah, it's pretty good. But yeah, a lot of these cards, I won't go into them all, obviously, because there's a huge post here. But I'm really excited that they're changing cards that just weren't seen at all play. Geode Hatchling is getting a little bit of a nerf as it is. It's 1 more increased damage. No one cared about the damage. The ping was just minuscule. But changing it so that it has to be an elemental buff means you're not going to play this in every deck. Means you're going to play this in an elemental game. Molten Swimmer is completely reworked, and I love it to death. Damage to your target increases by the number of elemental buffs you have in play. Yeah, go ahead and run Flame Chained Elder in a Molten Swimmer deck, in an Abyss deck. Look at all those Abyss Tentacles, all those Abyss Shades that are all elementals. Molten Swimmer, first turn, draw a card, 2 damage, plus this, plus 3 Tentacles, is a 6 damage card, draw a card, then trigger your elementals. That's insane. That's insane. The Exterior Fabricator, this one almost never saw play in an elemental style or in a location style deck. Giving this thing the ability to restart itself is going to make this common buff an all-star in a lot of location-style decks. Because you heal and then deal damage, and then you can go ahead and restart it. Like, that's awesome. Restarting and getting value out of buffs is insane. They're changing and making insects, which I am super happy about. I am very happy about this. Oakthorn Rider is now the corrupted spirit of nature. If you have an insectoid buff, draw a card. Awesome. Oakthorn Rider really didn't see play at all. It's not a card that anyone really cared that much about. Sipid Queen is no longer I beat stall infinitely. Disturbed Elemental. Yeah, there's a healing card for nature now that deals damage. I wouldn't be surprised if a Heroic Starfish got to change something like this. Mantix Weaver completely got changed because of the way they're making buffs with defend abilities on them. Which now makes like this amazing. First of all, it's a healing card for nature. Top notch right there. But then it's like, yeah, my insect buffs cannot be removed. Cassilia got to change entirely. Like a lot of these cards that are being changed. The Heap. So good. Finally, the Heap is being a more viable, which means the True Stone might be a viable deck too. This card didn't get much of a change other than the +1 here. Kind of disappointing. Seeing as how this card, I didn't see a whole lot of play from it before. Maybe it's fine now. Maybe we're going to see a fun deck with it now. But it's just like, it's got to be in a very large crystal style deck, obviously. But yeah, just discarding that many seems ridiculously weird. The fact that they're making a lot of these store 2 Kuriboh cards instead of 3, very nice. It makes a lot of these buffs more viable and easier to pull off. And then when it expires, draw a card. There's more reason to run this now. There's so much interesting and cool things they're doing with all of that I'm super excited to see the changes. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Well, guys, I hope you're as excited for these changes as I am. So, what were the did they give a post as to which cards were changed in the game? Was that somewhere? Was that somewhere where they gave a post of which cards were changed? Or was that just if you open the app, then you're told? You're told when you open the app. Okay. There's an update here, and my web camera is so small. Of course, it might have been this small so that I could not cover up the deck. Yeah, I do got to figure out, because having this camera jet out of this side, I think it would be better jetting out of this side if this is where I'm going to place my camera. I just got to move some stuff around, make this a little more viable of a workstation now. Whoop. Card tweaks. Okay. The Ancient now requires 5 stored cards and moves a buff to the deck instead of removing. That's a good change. That's a good change. I think having a removal is very too powerful. I like the change of that. Now it's 4 corners, but only the first is clunky. It rotates forward a field for 2 or more. That's fine. Having the first one be clunky, that's great. especially with all the cards that can manipulate the board. Ferris the Banished now only moves 1 fire elemental to the hand, but also 2 to the deck. That's fine. It's not the bottom 2, so I guess you get to choose as well. So that could be perfectly fine. Lava Tamer is now a defend card that heals for 3 instead of dealing 3 damage. That is going to remove a lot of spike damaging turns from Mountain. That's going to hurt a lot of those elemental just burst decks that we were seeing Mountain pretty much dominate with. Which in my opinion is okay. I'm okay with that. I think there should be very little support cards that are also damaging cards, because then all you're doing is all out aggro. The support should be healing, in my opinion. And I thought that right when the card came out too. So I'm A-okay with that change. And probably Mud Turtle's not that happy with it, as now a lot of people are like, well, I can't do my 8 damage turn and just kill him. It's like, well, no. That shouldn't get that from action cards or from attack cards. You should get that from buffs. Make buffs more viable. Magrock's ability, I'm over the moon about Magrock's ability. The fact that it can only do it once per turn and heals for 3, I'm okay with the healing for 3. The fact that it only does it once per turn is huge to me. I am super excited for that it's not just a bonkers continuously heal you back from 2 all the way to 12. Like, that was too much value in my opinion. Portable turret now triggers when you're below 10 health. That's good. There's a lot of times when you are below 10 health. And if it is still being explosive superior, I think that's fine to be that low. Can now only return your own buffs. That's awesome. Time Jumper Rylox. It'll really replay the way it thinks, because controlling the board was way too strong. Way too strong. And, yeah, obviously this will probably see, this change next week, because none of these are in that article that I just read. This must have came out on Thursday, and the article came out on Wednesday, so we'll see how that is. But yeah, guys, I am over the moon excited about all the changes that are coming to the game, all the reworks that they're doing. And as I said, guys, now with legitimately all of these changes, we're finally done with... It feels like we're finally moving out of the beta and we're getting into the game. We're getting into the actual released game that they want to do. So we toughed through it. All us physical players that started 2 years ago toughed through the alpha, toughed through all the stuff that they were going to do. Now going into the full digital version, we made it through the beta with all the card changes, with the classical format, with all the errata dumps, with everything they're doing. Now we're finally getting into their more well-established game. All the cards are being reworked to be balanced more efficiently and effectively. We're getting out of the generic 5 damage, 6 healing cards. We're getting into more of the conditional increases. We're finally moving out of beta and into the real game, and I am super excited for that. I'm really excited this game is actually becoming the game that we all knew it could be. Without further ado, everyone, I believe we have some online Lightseekers games to review. So, I gotta make sure. Can we just go ahead and chop that down a little bit? Maybe even move me over so I can get a little bigger here. That's too big. There we go. I'm kind of more boxed in. Let me read what you guys have been saying. Oh, it's why OL is on a hiatus. That makes complete sense with all those massive changes. Yeah, it would make sense that you took a pause. I found it interesting when Benny said the app was really only thought of as a support for the physical game. Made sense why it had so little game modes. Yeah, exactly. I mean, they really wanted to keep the physical around. The app was only meant for you to download your cards in, probably be a deck building helper and whatnot. And then you know, digital's what took over in this day and age. So they're like, well, if we already have the app, let's do all this stuff that only digital can do, and really make it into that. And there's a lot of mechanics that you can only do in digital that you can't do in physical. Um, for coding purposes as well, as we've seen in Hearthstone, where it's like, you know, discard a random card from your hand, or not that. It's like buff certain cards in your hand. Find certain cards at random from your deck. Like there's a whole lot of nice coding things that you can do in digital that you can't do in physical. So it kind of open up to a lot of values for different game mechanics as well, if they choose to explore that avenue as well. But sadly, I miss physical. I know we all do. A lot of people right now are playing physical at Frogtown Hobbies. So awesome job to you guys keeping that alive. I hope you guys are having a lot of fun. Wish I could be there. Don't have the money to travel though. Without further ado, I think we are going to take a quick break just for editing purposes. For editing purposes. So, yes, copy cards from other decks. Yep. So, one sec, guys.